Citizen Kane is considered one of the greatest movies ever made. Mank is a story about how it was written. Citizen Kane pioneered cinematographic techniques that inspired generations of films to come. Mank recreated these techniques in a digital medium and has received a whopping 10 nominations for this year's Academy Awards. Today I'm going to show you 3 camera techniques used in Mank, which you can apply to your own photography. The first thing that strikes you about Mank is the lighting. Mank is shot entirely in monochrome. All the distractions of color are removed. There's only black and white, light and shadow. In the art world, this high contrast lighting is known as Chiaroscuro. When Citizen Kane was released, it inspired a legion of film noir movies using the same look. It's relatively simple to recreate as long as you have the lights for it. Let's take one of these stills from Mank as an example. The key thing about Chiaroscuro is contrast. Notice how the scene is carefully constructed so that lighter foreground elements are overlapping darker background elements, and vice versa. It seems like there are at least 4 light sources in this image. There's the key light on the top left-hand side, an overhead fill light above the chair, and a background light on the horse figurine. Lastly, there's a catch light here providing specular highlights in the eyes to prevent them from looking dull and lifeless. To recreate this lighting, I've used an LED light as my key light, a fluorescent desk lamp on a tripod as my overhead light, and a small table side light as my background light, which is inside of a box to limit its vertical spread. For my catch light, I need a small pointed light source, so I've used the flash on my phone. Putting it all together, it looks something like this. Chiaroscuro is just one technique in the Mank bag of camera tricks. Let's see what else we can find. What makes a picture look cinematic? Is it a blurry background? Is it a close-up shot? According to Greg Toland, the cinematographer behind Citizen Kane, it's neither. In a radical departure from films of the time, and even of films nowadays, Toland made extensive use of deep focus, where all the elements of a scene are in sharp focus. He coupled this with the use of wide-angle 24mm lenses to produce scenes with meticulous blocking and composition. Toland justified this stylistic choice by saying that the human eye sees an entire panorama at once, with everything clear and lifelike. Instead of blurring out irrelevant details of a scene, Toland would use the dramatic shadows of chiaroscuro to create space and separate foregrounds from backgrounds. Another unorthodox feature of Citizen Kane is the prevalence of low-angle shots. Many movies avoided this because film studios had lighting equipment in place of a ceiling. But Orson Welles felt that low angles made interior shots look more interesting, and so he created fake ceilings using cloth. For one scene, a hole was even drilled into the floor so that the camera would be able to capture the low angle. The end result of these wide-angle, hyperfocal shots is that you get the feeling that you're watching a play on a stage, as opposed to a movie. Director David Fincher and cinematographer Eric Messerschmidt ensured Mank continued this style, with several scenes employing deep focus, wide shots, and low angles. Let's try to recreate one of these shots. Mank the writer struggled with alcoholism throughout his life, and there's a scene where he passes out and drops a bottle of alcohol on the ground. Ever since the pandemic started, I too find myself surrounded with bottles of alcohol. 70% to be exact. So that's what I'll be using for this shot. Just like in the original scene, I've set up the bottle in the foreground, some discarded YouTube scripts in the midground, and some shoes in the background, so I know where to stand. Once everything's in focus, I take the picture. So that's a simple example of deep focus, which leaves us just one more technique to explore. Performance in low light situations has been a constant challenge for cameras, as they aren't as sensitive as the human eye. If you ever try to shoot a video or take a picture at night, you'll find that attempting to expose without adequate lighting often results in a grainy, unclear image. Early Hollywood cinematographers got around this problem by shooting night scenes in daylight, in such a way to make them look like they were shot at night. This technique is called day for night, and has been used in recent movies such as Mad Max and Pan's Labyrinth. Day for night is much easier to pull off in black and white, and there's a scene in Mank that illustrates this. You can do this with pictures as well. Take a photo during the day and edit it to make it look like it's at night. In order to make the edit easier, here are some tips for shooting day for night. Shoot in the morning or the afternoon. Avoid the light of the midday sun, as this will create harsh shadows and highlights, which aren't really associated with night. Shoot raw. Shooting in raw format will give you more picture information to work with, which will give you more leeway in the editing process. Underexpose your image. Make sure your histogram is pulled slightly towards the left, as we want our scene to be darker instead of lighter. Avoid shooting the sky. The sky will be naturally overexposed and will be a dead giveaway that it was shot during daylight, so leave it out of frame if you can. So here's the picture I took, and here's how I edited it. So here's the raw image. The first thing I want to do is change it to black and white. Then I'm going to do some overall changes to the exposure. So I'm going to bring this down a bit, decrease the highlights, lift up the shadows a bit, and decrease the whites as well, because generally at nighttime everything's a bit darker. Next, I'm going to change the white balance a bit to the bluer side, because we're going for that cooler nighttime look. And the next part is pretty important. You see, back in the old days, they used to use filters when shooting on film, because that would darken the skies. Here we're working digitally, so we don't need to do that, but we can use the black and white mixer here. If you notice, if I pull down the blues here, you see the sky is darkened a bit. The next thing I want to do is create a few light sources, because as you can see it's a bit too dark, and in the original picture the lamps were off, but that's not a problem. We can turn them on. We have that power. All we need to use is the radial gradient. So if I zoom in, I'm going to be creating essentially 3 circles, one for the lamp, one for the glow around the lamp, and then one for the ground, which the lamp is casting a light on. So first we'll make the small circle, same size as the lamp. I'll put it over here, and I want to turn on the lamp. So what I'm going to do is I will increase the exposure, increase the whites a bit as well to make it more intense, and then I can just duplicate this so I can bring it to the other lamps. Now we're going to add a glow. So again, I'm going to be making another circle. This time it'll be a bit bigger, and I'm going to be increasing the exposure again, but not as much, because obviously if the light is further away from the lamp, it won't be as bright. To avoid this kind of harsh edge, I'm going to increase the feathering so it's a bit more natural. The last part is to add a light on the ground, because Obviously, if the light is casting light onto the ground, it's going to be a bit brighter around the lamppost as opposed to further out. Again, it's further from the light source, so I'm going to be decreasing it a bit. You can see the effects are kind of subtle, but that's kind of the idea. You don't want to make it too bright. We're just adding a little subtle lighting to make it look like it's night. And once it's all done, you pretty much have your night shot. I'm just going to crop it a bit to leave out this sky. It's a bit too bright and it's taking away from the illusion we're trying to create. And there we go. Here is our day for night shot. From this to this. And there you have it. 3 camera tricks from Mank to give your images that classic Hollywood look. As always, let me know what you think in the comments below, and stay tuned for the next video.